Welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, helping you get to your onward journey. A friendly service that helps you get from A to B, or probably nowhere at all.
Hello and welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, or as we like to call it for short, MERP. But then we never call it MERP, but then we do sometimes. Anyway, I'm your host, James, and with me is co-host and producer, Sam.
Sam. Oh, you said it.
I'm tired. Anyway, Sam, how are you?
Yes, I am very, very good. Apart from the blooming autumnal winter cold has kicked in, and I've been feeling a bit stuffy today. But otherwise, I've been good. Hobby-wise, I've those on Instagram will have seen I've been doing some scenic work on the bridge part of the layout, and I've probably done a few bits out of sync as to how I should should do it, but I just sort of got carried away and wanted to do little bits and bobs. So um, I've been adding what you'd call depth to the actual riverbed. So on the deepest parts, I've done them sort of like a dark grey, and then as it gets to sort of shallower areas, I've gone up and worked my way up to like a brown on there. So hopefully, when I put the resin on top of it, there'll be a depth to the river, as well as whatever the natural occurring depth of the river would be. So I'm I'm hoping that works. If it doesn't, I'll be very, very sad.
I'm sure
Um,
that will.
yeah. Well, that's the plan. And yeah, I've been adding shrubs, bushes, trees, and stuff like that, which massively has changed how the area looks on the layout. That has like there's sort of like the bit by the motorway, which is a little bit more grim and brambles and stuff like that, and then there's the part that's on the other side of the bridge, which is the lush sort of. It's nowadays it's a walking trail that goes underneath the bridge and stuff like that. So um, lots of trees, shrubs, bushes, and stuff like that on that end. And I actually managed to. James sent me probably about a year and a half ago now. You sent me those Oxford diecast cars for your wagons, and
Yeah.
they sit quite nicely on. There's a little tiny car park, which depending on when you're modeling it, there was sort of like a little single track road that went underneath the M27 that had like a little tiny car park where you could look out onto the bridge. And there's sort of,
Okay.
I think it's 1990, they sort of turned that into you can only walk under it. It became sort of like a walking underpass. Um, but I think before 1990, you could drive a car around there and you could sort of sit, watch the trains, the river, and have a packed lunch kind of thing. Um, so I've modelled it that that will be a little tiny car park, and it means that those Oxford diecast cars that you sent me can sit there, and then the other ones will be able to go on the top bit, which will be the M27. So yeah, it works out in the end. How about you? What have you been up to?
Well, what have I been up to? I've been working on the Boys Engage layout, this terminus station layout, um, and we're getting somewhere. So I've opted not to do the cassette storage system. I don't know if maybe we talked about it last week. I know we've talked about it. I just can't remember we talked about it on the show or not.
I think
Uh,
we briefly touched on it.
so yeah, so I've opted not to go with that because yeah, that was it. I did talk about it because I remember now mentioning that I couldn't get the angle to solder and stuff like that. So. That's the only track laying part remaining. But to do that, I need to pull apart the layout in his room. So I've had to pre-warn him that there will be a period where he doesn't have a layout. Um, Not for long, hopefully. It'll just be a case of just taking the track up there, bringing it down here, sorting out the fiddle yard, and then that's all ready to go. We'll get it wired up, and he can then run trains on this, and then so with only the fiddle yard to work on, I've been working on the scenic area myself. So I've been doing a bit of scenic works, building the Metcalf platform kit still. I think that got mentioned last week as well, but still, yeah, we're getting around to finishing that off, and then putting a station building on the end of the station. And this has been quite a fun one. So bought the Kestrel kits, Station Master House, and the station building. Um, he got them off his nan for Christmas last year, and they went on his current layout. Um, and then we saw a layout at the Engage show where they'd been combined, but I'm not sure it was this station building. It's possible it was the Pico station building. Looking at the sort of the way it got laid out in the end and where the doors and windows are, they don't quite match.
Yeah.
But however, we've got the Kestrel one, so that's what I use. So
Yeah.
yeah, so the station building actually met an unfortunate end the other week. The boy got a bit upset about something, and it happened to be the first thing in his line of sight. So it needed a major repair. So we decided that after seeing this station building on, I think it was called Cuckno, which is it was at the say the International Engage show. It's on my video, and I took the station building and repaired it, and then cut it in places so that it now butts up against the station master's house. So it's all one big building.
Right.
I think
Okay.
it looks quite impressive like that. So yeah, I sort of took that inspiration from that, and I've been working on that. And the hardest part, and it was more because of the amount of time of the previous coating of paint, was that it had been painted in the GWR style building, where they have your sort of red orange brickwork, and then you have your engineering blue brick around the bottom, and then picked out around the walls around the sides and that.
Right.
And it took me hours to paint it like that. And then because of the station platform being a stone color and the engine sheds being a stone color, because they're Metcalfe card kits, obviously I can't change the colors of them.
Yeah.
We want it to kind of match and look like they're all built at the same time. I had to heartbreakingly paint over the painstakingly painted GWR colors into this sort of grayish blue brown stonework color that it looks nice. It matches the other buildings, but considering how long it took me to paint the others, that hurt to do that. It hurt, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that's sort of been going on there. I've got to do the same to the goods shed because that's also in current GWR sort of brick colours. I'm gonna have to go in the stone colours, so I'm gonna have to do it to that one as well. So yeah, it is what it is, I suppose. But I think it's looking quite good. I'm quite pleased with it, and we just got to work out an uncoupling system. But otherwise, I think it'd be quite a fun layout to work. It definitely looks fun. Just bringing the trains in, uncoupling them, getting the pilot, take the coaches away, bring your freight train in and take it down to the yard. Got a turntable, turn your engines around, and the shed for servicing, and all in 8 foot by 1 foot. So, you know, depending on what you're modeling, you don't need a lot of space. I mean, 8 foot's quite long, but it doesn't take up that much width. So, yeah, that's been going on there. And then I've been making a few purchases, I suppose, this week as well. We might as well just talk about our modelling because when it comes to news, how much news do we have this week?
I'm going to say next to nothing.
We have nothing. There is nothing. I'm not aware of anything. I haven't seen anything news wise, really.
I
So
th I think I said to you the only thing that popped into my head that was even remotely news was Rails said that they had some updates about upcoming releases from Curascale and sort of like the project run of them, and it was the 31s and the Suburban coaches and the Deltics. Basically saying that they're coming in the next few months. So if you're one of the people waiting for the Pania or the Class 50, I'm putting my hand up here, they don't look to be on the horizon anywhere anytime soon. So just bear that in mind if you're expecting them to arrive this side of Christmas or even in January, February. I think you'll be holding your breath there. But I'd happily eat my words. But that's pretty much the only news I know of. So yeah, let's continue to talk about our own modeling. So what purchases have you made?
so you may remember that we had a discussion of what we decided would be the ultimate winner of our Fight Club, and then we concluded that neither of us actually owned that model.
That
So
is
I
true.
felt that needed rectifying, really, didn't it? We can't go around saying it's the best when you don't actually own it. So yeah, I went on the old Curious Go website. Now the reason I went on there was my Andrew Barclay tank turned up the other week, and I put it on the track. And when I put it on the track, it free rolled, and I was like, "Oh, that's not a good sign." So I put some power on, and I can hear the motor going, but there's no movement. So the worm gear is not connecting with the gears. Ah. So I emailed Accurascale, and their customer service is really spot on. You can't fault them for this. So, next morning, straight away, I believe Patrick dealt with this one, and he emailed me and he said, "Okay, sounds like worm gear is not connected to the gearing. I think the motor may have just come loose during shipping. So if you follow this link, it will tell you how to fix the problem." So I clicked the link, and it was a 5 minute job. Just turned the model upside down, unscrewed it, took the body off, and it was just a case that the motor had just popped out of its housing. Just pushed it back in, and yeah, it runs beautifully now. So I noticed there was a few other people. I think you shared a couple of posts from Instagram where people were complaining about it. But yeah, it is a really simple fix. It's probably quicker to ask them and do it than post an Instagram post about it and complain about it.
Well, that's good then.
But yeah, so I was on the website, obviously having a look at that, and then I just had a thought, and I was like, I wonder how many Scale points I've actually got. So I had a look, because if you obviously buy through them, they have the reward system, which I think I've recommended it before because I've got decoders from them before using the reward system. It is great, and they build up quite quick. So yeah, I had a decent amount of points. So I had a look. I ummed and ahed. I thought maybe I could get another Andrew Barclay tank, and then I thought, no, let's have a look, see what they've got left of the Manors. And the Ilford Manor was left in stock, so I was like, yeah, let's do it. We've called it out as our top engine for our fight clubs. It's time one came to the layout. So yeah, I got myself Ilford Manor. You know, the BR Early Crest Black. It looks absolutely stunning. It runs really nicely as well. It is a superb model. So yeah, definitely worthy of our award of number one engine.
Have you got any videos of it going around?
Not yet.
This isn't a dig, I promise.
I was
Um,
going to do something last night, but then I just got building that station building, which was much more fun. I just sort of got into that, and I was like, that's sort out running session later. But I did run it backwards and forwards on the track, but I've sort of so I've stolen the controller from the layout to hook up to the N-Gage layout whilst I'm building that to do all the testing.
yeah.
And then wiring it back into the layout is going to be a bit of a pain because what I've done is I've just taken it apart and not actually labeled anything up. So I'll have to double check where everything goes. So, um, so I just found a train set controller and I've just jigged it up so it just connects to the bus underneath the scenic side of the layout. And I can just run up and down the scenic side, but I can't do a full circle because the Vidyard's a separate entity. So I will get around to it. I said I would, and I will, but it's just when I get the time.
I am smiling and laughing, but it was a genuine question only because I wanted to see it running around because you sent me a picture of it and in the BR black it looks absolutely stunning. I've seen it loads in the green in the Great Western Green
Mm.
and it looked great, but then when I saw it in the black I was like, oh, it does look tasty, and I thought, oh, that's quite nice.
Yeah, it is. I really like the matte black around the smoke box. It's really effective. It looks like the paint has burnt and lost its shine from the heat that's under there. I think it's a really nice touch on it. Having a look at it, it's yeah. When you look at other steam engines, they tend to be still a bit more sort of got that sort of satin shine to them still.
Yeah,
Whereas this hasn't, and I think it makes the model look so much more realistic. It takes that toy appearance away from it.
yeah.
So I'm quite impressed with that. But so yeah, so I got that, and then because I keep thinking about this modular idea of adapting my layout so I can swap baseboards around. Um, I've sort of wandered into Somerset and Dorset territory and gone, right, well, I'm doing my Transpennine route for me modern day because I think that look quite cool and I still want to do that. But I know I can do Somerset and Dorset now. And, I missed not modelling Somerset and Dorset. And then obviously because the 7F was in the Fight Club, it was one of our favourites. Did it win our favourite in the end? Or what was our favourite freight?
Yes, it won our favorite freight, and it was a unanimous decision by both of us, I think, on both in real life and what's the other word? And in
Model.
model form. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was very good.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's all because of all this talk of fight clubs and locomotives on there. But yeah, I'd started having a look at other engines that had made it through the Fight Club because the one I've been thinking about for some time was a 9F. I was just like, I've been, I really like, we've discussed this before. I really like 9Fs, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna get a 9F, and had a little look around, and I ummed and ahed about this because Rails had sound fitted one in their bargaining section at 187.
Mm.
Which for a sound fitted hover gauge loco is certainly is a bargain. And I ummed and ahed about it, and then it must have been the last one in stock because I went, "Yeah, I'll go get it." A couple of days later, and then had a look, and it had gone. So I was like, "Oh!" But fortunately, Kerno also had the same loco in the sale, and it's a Somerset and Dorset loco. It was sent allocated to Bath Depot. I think it's 9212 off the top of my head. I'll have to double check. Anyway, that was the appeal to it. And yeah, so I've sort of been starting to build up an S&D collection so I can swap the boards out and put the Somerset and Dorset boards in if I so feel like it at some point. So that's probably my two current projects. I probably do GWR one of some description because I've got these GWR locos that didn't run the S&D. I think the S&D saw the Colette 060 tender and the panniers. I think that's about as westernized as locomotive power got there. But
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, very much on the steam era thing for me. But that probably end up being the theme for next season, wouldn't it?
A very big steam, which is weird because I think in terms of plans of where the next season's going to be going, I think we're looking at doing a lot of diesel fight clubs or definitely electrics, diesels and stuff like that. So that'd be
There's at
interesting.
least one diesel fight club planned, yeah, because we just got to cover diesel era really. But um, I can't remember what I listed. There's a few ideas in there.
Yeah,
But
we have plans. That's the main thing. There are plans for us to continue for at least another 6 months.
that's what I've been up to modelling wise anyway. So it'll be quite fun.
Yeah, that's good. And that's the thing. As long as you're finding the hobby fun, like it, we talked a couple of weeks ago about burnout and mental health and stuff like that. And obviously, if as long as you're finding the hobby fun, that's the main thing. Um, I've done that sort of thing where I'm enjoying doing the scenics and stuff. I'm not enjoying how messy I've made it in the loft. Like I, I, I within a reasonable amount, I can keep it reasonably tidy. But as soon as I start doing scenics or anything where I'm trying to do anything that's a visual effect on boards, I almost change into like this scenic werewolf where I just make a huge amount of mess and then I can't get past clearing it up or like I can't tidy away and then come back to it kind of thing. I'm quite bad at it.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah, I can't work in a messy room. The room has to be tidy. So when I come in here and I start to do something, I tidy it up, and like you say, and then you get all your scenic bits out. You've got your glue out and your scatters and what have you, and they all start spreading across the layout, and then it's just a mess. And then I don't want to do any more work because I want to tidy it up, but I don't want to tidy it up because I want to carry on to work. So I just procrastinate and then just end up just sitting down and watching YouTube. So,
Which is okay. You're allowed to do that. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've missed off the list because I feel like I've done loads of hobby, but that doesn't necessarily. It's when you spread it out over the course of a week, you have done loads, but it sounds like you've done nothing. It's a little bit like when you try and explain that you've emptied the dishwasher and you've done the washing in the tumble dryer and stuff, and you deliberately try and make it sound way more complicated than it is, so it makes it sound like you've done loads.
yeah. And that's the wiring. It's like when you go, I think for a couple of weeks you kept asking me what I've been doing, and I just answered, I've just been wiring up the boys' layout, and and they just oh, was that it? And it's like, well, no. If you looked at the jungle of wires underneath, you'd see why it's been like 3 weeks of wiring. Because I've been putting isolation switches in there. There's point control. There's baseboard joins. It's far more complex than it sounds. But yeah, but when it comes down to it, it's just wiring. And but I am glad I'm past that stage. I mean, I've got to go back to it obviously to add these fiddle yard roads in. But I am glad I'm past the wiring stage. That was probably the hardest part of this build was just getting through that. And like I say, yeah, I am enjoying it now because putting this platform in, putting these station buildings in, and the boy's been helping too because obviously it's his layout and we're doing it together. So I've been giving him little kits that we've picked up at shows over the years. So he's been building ratio coal scythes.
Oh, cool.
all on his own. Yeah. So he's been, I've showed him how to cut it off the spur without cutting himself. So, filing it down so all the nibs and that are smooth, and he's glued it together. And I've primed it for him. That's only bit because obviously I don't want him with a spray can. And then he's painted it. So yeah, it's been quite enjoyable to work together. And that's actually does remind me there is something I wanted to talk about this week on the news, and we've completely forgotten. Do you remember last week I sent you a link to a video? This is the Pico and Kato. They've got together now. Kato have been promoting recently their little diorama boards. Like they're like I'd say 6-inch square sort of little modular boards that you can put together, and using their track, you can build up a little model railway.
Yeah.
Just put them together as dioramas.
Yeah. I do
They are
remember it now that
now
you've said that.
they're now producing them for children, and that's what's reminded me because I was about to say it's been really enjoyable. I've been sat at my modelling desk, and my boy's been sat next to me, and I've been working on his station, and he's been building these coal sites, and then we've been working this layout together, and it's so nice to sort of do that together and work together and do that. So and that's what reminded me that yes, Pico and Kato have joined up and they've got and I think they're great little things for Christmas. Yes, so this actually looks quite good, and I think it's just in time for Christmas. And there is currently two kits. One is Much Natter Station, and the other one is the Rainbow Gardens. Now they are a recommended retail price of 29.95. I think you might be able to find a little bit of a retailer discount if you have a look around. I'm not so sure with Pico. Sometimes they stick to the same price. But anyway, it comes with the sort of wooden baseboard, this little wooden sort of laser cut kit that you build, bit of track, and then all the scenic parts to build the scene. And you can work together. You sit down with your child and build this kit. There's some stickers in there. I think there's even a little storybook which involves these little scenes. And so they've got the two for now, and I think there's more planned to come in the future. So I think they're quite good, sort of a little rainy day little project. And it'd be quite interesting to see if because obviously if they're planning to track, I would like to think there'd be some sort of loco coming along in the future.
That would be really cool.
So yeah, if there's some sort of entry level 009 loco that's going to go along with these kits, that'd be quite impressive. So yeah, little Christmas present idea there for anyone that wants to sort of encourage a younger generation to get into the hobby. It's the Pico Kato diorama kit, and yeah, Picorama Much Natter Station, which is based on their station at Picorama. And in fact, I think the other one is as well. I think the garden is also based on Picorama, which is Picorama. That's it. It's called Picorama Rainbow Garden. So yeah, I think it's a really nice idea, and there's no I suppose area bias if that's the way to frame it in that this could be modelled on anything, and it's just quite open and inviting to just start in the hobby. I think it's quite a clever idea, quite a nice idea. I hope it sort of picks up for Pico and Kato.
Yeah, I think in terms of trying to get people into the hobby, this is one of those forward-thinking good ideas to try and get people in, and for someone who just wants to do a little small project. Like there's good parts on both sides of it. So well done, Kato and Pico.
So there we are. There was a bit of news for the week. I just managed to remember it.
Just in time. Now we've talked a little bit about your modular layout idea and that you're coming around to Somerset and Dorset idea at the moment. But that ties in nicely to my question is that when you do these, are you going to try and do it where on your modern day you're going to have possibly a little bit more of an urban setting, and then maybe when you do your Somerset and Dorset, you're going to go for sort of a rural setting on it?
Well, that's a good question, actually. Now, I have been looking and have been wondering because obviously the more urban settings have the appeal of stations and sheds and warehouses, etc. But then, what I love about the Somerset and Dorset is that picturesque Mendip Hills view when you've got the viaduct, running through a valley, and you've got these two locos on the front of the Pines Express snorting away. So sometimes the appeal is rural, and sometimes the appeal is urban. But I suppose the only way we can really sort of get to the bottom of this is have a good old discussion about it. So, shall we take a break and do that?
Yes, what a good idea.
Look at that! You see that there? The super shiny diesel loco that's coming this way. Yeah, I see it. Isn't it beautiful? So fresh, so clean, like it's straight out of the box. I mean, yeah, it's nice, but I prefer it to have a used look to it. In an ideal world, that would be nice. But I'm sure the owner doesn't have the confidence, skill, or time to undertake such a job. Then why don't they just send it to Emperor's Path? Emperor's Path? Yeah. SBJ has years of experience in model railways and wargaming, the ability to meet your weathering needs, and works with you during the whole process to ensure the project is how you want it, not like it's come through a factory. Come on, that must cost a fortune. Not really. He offers different levels of weathering at really affordable prices. I've got my whole fleet weathered by him. My loco's got the full treatment, whilst my rolling stock just a dusting with the airbrush, and it looks really authentic. I might just get a quote. How do I contact him? You get him on Instagram at emperors_path, by Facebook, Emperor's Path, or emperorspathcontact@gmail.com. Emperor's Path Weathering. If it's not filthy, let's change that.
Okay, right. We are back, and this week we are going to be talking about layout types, urban or country. Which one do you prefer? So, Sam, do you have a particular type of layout that you enjoy?
I think this is a really, really difficult question because I like them both for different things. So I love a station scene, like a big, busy urban station scene. But I also just like watching trains go along sort of like a rural area because that's what happens, isn't it? You have both of those things going on at one point.
Mm.
The answer to the question is I like both of them.
And that's
And
our topic for the day. Discuss. Thank you very much for listening.
I I think I love both of them. It depends what's running on them as to which one I prefer.
Hmm. That's
So
true.
I really like urban scenes for modern day stuff, and especially multiple units. So I love seeing something where there's a big busy station and I'm seeing Southern stock pop into the station, stop, and then off they go or anything. I mean, you don't tend to see the big sort of London areas modeled as much as you do the rural areas. I guess that's the thing. I think maybe I prefer the urban areas because it's not modeled as much, whereas rural gives you so much scope on what you can do. It gives you almost this clarity of freedom that in an urban setting, you sort of, if you're modeling a particular place, there will be someone who goes, well, that's got to be there, that's got to be there, that you wouldn't have this, you wouldn't have that. Whereas rural, it's very much a case of you try and find, I think the rural area, let's say for every 2 miles of urban, there's probably 23 to 30 miles of rural, if that makes sense. So the span of what you can do and how people can't necessarily catch you out of what you're doing in that area, I think is quite important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think you're right. When I think about the exhibition scene, there's definitely a lot more, I think, countryside to urban layouts out there. Um, maybe it's that planning stage of you're thinking about it and the view's blocked from an urban scene, whereas the countryside is a lot more open, a lot more free to watch the trains run by.
Yeah.
Maybe that's most people's memories of watching railways is going out to the countryside and finding a nice sort of spot where you can watch the trains run for a nice long distance. Whereas when you're in that urban scene, it's more of getting a glimpse of a train going by. You don't really, unless you're on the station platform
Mm.
or an overbridge, it's difficult to find a spot and watch the trains go by.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that's probably sometimes what it comes down to is, and maybe it's the amount of effort and required to build a layout, and it's sort of that wanting to just get things running. Maybe it's that concern of the view being blocked. But I mean, I've got like I found a nice spot to watch trains go by when I was doing my old decorating job, and we were painting in Bedford College. And if you went right up to the top floor at Bedford College on the stairwell, you could see across the town and over towards the Midland Main Line. And you spend a bit of time up there, just on the stairwell, just watching the trains go by. That was a great spot
Yeah.
for for sort of urban railway watching. And I remember that's where I got my first glimpse of the Network Rail 97s, a pair of them on a test train. That's always stuck in my mind, seeing them run by. So sometimes I think maybe an urban scene like that can be pretty nice because it's a bit like making tracks for how they've got theirs at the moment is they've actually gone for that full size building at Watford Station, and they've got all the trees around it in the car park and the flats across the way, and then it does block the view of the railway and it does force your perspective. And I think that's a nice thing about urban railways is it forces you to look at the layout in a certain way, and therefore some maybe sometimes is viewed as how the builder wants you to see the layout rather than just you standing there and just getting a good look at it because it's all open.
Yeah.
You don't get it's because I've always wondered if like like um say like Everard Junction, he built his layout with camera angles in mind.
Hmm.
So, he'll build something like he goes, "Oh, I've built this corner. I think this corner look really good because I can put a camera here, and I think it'll look really good with the trains coming out." And I've always wondered if, and it's probably impractical for an exhibition, really, but if you ever built a layout and you just like blocked it off and just had viewing windows, which forced people to look at the layout from a certain sort of angle, so you had to look at it a certain way just to get the view of how the builder wants you to look at it. But I suppose that's probably eventually more into art than an exhibition board layout, I suppose.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the fear of people having to build big built up things for that urban part of it, or the fact that you do lose a view of the trains that you love and you've paid a lot for, I guess. Um, I also assume that when it comes to exhibition layouts, especially having the trees that are stuck in I've seen different people do different things in terms of they'll take the trees out when they transport their layouts, but I've also seen it where they'll leave them in, and because they've got a particular cover over the top of it, they don't have to worry. But do you think it's a case of that when you have an urban layout, you've still got a lot of stuff that you take off the layout and makes transporting harder because you've got these big, massive buildings, you've got all of these intricate bits that are covering your layout, and it makes it harder for you to transport it? Does that come down to it?
Yeah, maybe that is especially with exhibition layout. Maybe that is the factor of you restricted by what you can store, what you can transport, what you can carry, and therefore maybe the countryside scene is easier in that aspect. Like you say, you might just need to pull a couple of trees out that they can pop back in when you're set up, or like you say, you can build a cover that goes around it and it's all protected. And that urban scene, yeah, I suppose it's particularly if you're going for something sort of Londonish, you've got a lot of tall buildings that probably are going to take up a lot of space. And yeah, because I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I've one London layout that sticks in my mind is it was sort of South London. It's Engage. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was sort of a Stuart's Lane inspired depot down on the bottom, and then the rest of the line runs elevated on sort of embankments and walls as it runs through London. It was a really lovely Engage layout. It was a Network Southeast period. But apart from that, I can't think of much else. The only other urban scene that I can think of is Rod Stewart's layout, whereas obviously he's been working on that for years and just building many, many different buildings.
Yeah.
But he has the advantage of time and money, I suppose.
I mean, it's debatable about time, but yeah.
There's not many of us that can rent a hotel room and then rent the room next door just for your model railway, so you can do a bit of modelling whilst you're going around doing your job.
Yeah, not
Um,
many of
um,
us.
yeah, I'm pretty sure my company wouldn't pay for that if I said I want a room next door to bring my modelling bits whilst I'm away on a course. So,
Maybe that's what we need to start asking for. Maybe that's part of our future rider for when we do model railway talks, podcasting podcasting live with model railway replacement podcast. I think if I was building something, I think I would struggle to do urban. Whereas I feel like almost the entry level, and that's not saying that it's easy to make it good, but I feel like you can do a rural layout, space, module, whatever you're planning on building. I feel like you can start from almost nothing and you can have a vast open area where the trains run through. You can have a nice country station. You can have like a shunting yard or just an exchange somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And the idea is that you can start with a flat canvas, or you can start with just a raised bed for your track and then the sides and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like with an urban layout, you can lay the track, and then obviously if you're having it elevated or if you're having it down below, that I think until you start building upwards on an urban layout, it's quite difficult to get to that point. And I'm saying that because I'm looking at my two boards, which are joined together, and one is very much, although I'd say it is a rural looking because it's mostly scenery rather than it's not um, like big buildings or anything like that. But I know that the other section is going to be a big station that's going to be dominating that part of the layout, and it's going to be in a busy part of the town and stuff like that. So I am going to have to and I know that until I have built upwards or built the buildings, it's going to look very much the same as a rural area. So you always start on a rural, I think is probably the easiest way to say it. And then you, by building upwards and building more around it, is how it changes from a rural layout to a urban layout.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's kind of difficult because in real life when you're out on a train, majority of the time it does run through the countryside, I suppose, and then when you do get to those um, urban areas, there's the transition between the two, isn't there? Which is
Mm.
quite difficult to model, I think, sometimes because it's sort of coming from those fields, and then usually it's the big warehouses, and then it's coming back, into more of the older town as you approach the station. I suppose trying to model that it is quite difficult. So sometimes it comes down to space and what's available to get it in there.
I think
Um,
by saying Everard Junction, I feel like you've probably hit it on the head because he did the transition very well, coming in from a countryside and getting busier and busier as the layout went round. And he
yeah,
had enough space that he could do it almost gradually. And there were like it got to you obviously had the scrapyard and stuff like that. And because that comes along a country road and then sort of turns into a scrapyard, he then had the canal, which sort of was almost like a mini scenic break. And then on the other side of the canal was when the big built up section comes across, and it didn't just suddenly happen, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. That's it, isn't it? Yeah, you can't just have like this hard line of countryside urban. It's got to be like you say a gradual building, and it all depends on what you're modeling, I suppose. And for a more modern era, I think you maybe can get away with you can have like a new housing estate as the start of coming into that urban area because obviously it's spread out and it's building on the land that's around it. And then say you can gradually sort of push your way in. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because the countryside option, I think when you think about it, actually requires more space than the urban option. Because I'm just looking at the two layouts in my rooms that I'm working on at the moment. It's obviously my one going around the walls for the double O, which is supposed to be like a Transpennine route, and it's a massive layout, and that's because I need loads of space to sort of represent the hills and rivers surrounding the area I wish to model, and then next to it, and then I appreciate it's because it's in Engage, but I'm also working on this urban scene for the boys layout, in which we're just doing a city terminus, and this thing's squeezed onto like they would with a real railway, I suppose, in the days when they were first built, is you'd squeeze it into the city where you could, and we've squeezed this setup onto this really small baseboard, but it looks busy, it looks compact, and I think the appeal of it is quite nice in the fact that when it's finished, we'll have the engine shed on it, we'll have the goods shed and the station, but the rest of the town will all be left to your imagination. But because it's so compacted and squeezed in, I think it fills in your mind will fill in the gaps of what should be around it and what you expect it to be. And maybe that's the appeal of what can be good about an urban design is even though in theory it's a bigger area in real life to just doing a few fields along the line side, it can be modeled more compactly.
I think visually, I prefer the look of the busy scene, but there's also that thing of I think you could do all of them in large scale, small scale, because one thing that makes, especially let's say inside the M25 in the London area, one thing that makes that seem so busy from a train point of view is you have so many lines that go off, and then you have so many lines that come on or go overhead and things like that. I think the point where um, the southern and the southwest meets that you usually sort of see as you're coming into London Victoria, you could sort of see you have so many lines converging on one point where you have the big, and I think Pete from Latchmere's layout's a really good one where he has that big girder bridge going across the top that comes and joins on another part of the layout.
Mm.
And I think on a large scale, you can do so much where you make it seem busy or empty and full of foliage and stuff like that. But then you can also do it where on a small scale, your industrial shunting layouts, you all it takes on that scale is you just need some factories and some buildings to really make it feel busy, industrial and urban. And there's a lot. I think an urban layout where there's not a lot going on feels weird, whereas a country layout where there's too much going on does seem weird. So, like, if you have so many different things going on in a rural layout, it seems weird and your mind can't play with it. But if you have an urban layout that's got not a lot going on, that also feels a bit bizarre. So you almost need busy, lots of stuff going on an urban layout, but on a rural layout, you kind of want it to be calm, quiet, and people just appreciate the scenery and the trains coming through, rather than the fact that you've got six diggers working over here building X, Y, and Z. Then you've got a farm. Then you've got a little village with a grocery. You kind of want to keep it simple and make the scenery the focal point and done well.
Yeah, yeah. I think because if you looked at a realistic mile going through countryside, you'd probably, depending where you picked, you might get one or two buildings really going on. It'd just all be plain line. There wouldn't be any sidings or anything like that for the majority of a run. Like you say, but in that urban setting, it's all compacted in, it's all squeezed together. There's a lot going on. That's because it's the focal point. But it's funny you say the industrial one because think of industrial railways. When you think of the narrow gauge railways, they sort of buck the trend because they tend to be built in these countryside settings, but for the hive of activity, usually at the quarry site or wherever it is, it's actually quite busy with everything going on, and then it runs out. It's got this industrial scene that's then run out. And in some cases, I've seen photos of some really beautiful countryside shots of industrial railways running through them, and you just don't think countryside when it comes to industrial railway. You just, like you say, you think grimy, gritty, sort of quarry-like or heavy industry near a town. But yeah, I've seen photos of narrow gauge lines running through really picturesque countryside, colliery lines as well. There's a cement works out sort of Cambridge way. I can't remember the name of it, but it was always one that stuck in my mind because it was in the Motive Power annual magazine. There was a couple of 20s waiting for the merry-go-round hoppers to be brought back by the two shunters that we used by the cement works. I think it was a Rugby cement works off the top of my head. And yeah, again, when I went and looked at that railway in real life, it was just cross flat countryside to this then isolated one big sort of cement factory that was all in these fields, and it's sort of it's a bit of an enigma to what you usually expect when it comes to a country or urban modelling. It's kind of combined the both into something a bit more unexpected, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess you can easily buck the trend when it comes to things like that. I guess there's that thing of maybe having a countryside station, but actually building the town that's around that countryside station up quite a bit, but in a very small area. Because
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
to think of a layout where you have that sort of countryside station and a really built up town around it, but still vast amounts of countryside elsewhere.
Is it? Yeah, because I'm terrible with names. I can't remember. There's a Great Western layout that comes to mind straight away that someone built, and I think it was an at-home layout. Um, and it was all GWR. And they've done the station and the tracks. I think it's sort of set around Somerset Way or something like that. And it's done that it's followed that traditional thing of, well, when railways got built, they weren't always built in the town they were supposed to serve. It'd always be like a couple of mile walk to the station, just because it was easier for them to build the railway that way than for the, bring the railway to the people sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you can sometimes have the likes of that because, like you say, then that could be a busy station because the nearby town is actually quite busy. It's just that the railway never got built close enough to it. So it's sort of in a model form. It's there's a few buildings in one of the corners representing what should be the town, but this really grand sort of lovely station is just sat in the middle of the countryside, and there is a bit of activity going on because actually there is a bit of industry and etc. That does require it.
Okay. So
But
my main question to you then, if you were going to define three things that had to be on an urban layout and three things that have to be on on a rural, I keep calling it countryside with, and we've titled it rural, sorry. If there were three things that have to be on a countryside and the three things that have to be on an urban, what are the three things of each that you think has to be on that layout to define it as that?
if you're doing, I mean, you do get bridges in the countryside, but that would be where you'd more likely see level crossings, I reckon.
Hmm.
Obviously, you can get the level crossings in the urban areas, but they're a bit more rare, I think. Um, so I'd say plenty of bridges if you're doing an urban because it's usually, as I say, it's built within the town. It's trying to squeeze its way in. Buildings quite close to the line, very very limited space around it.
Hmm.
Everything's sort of a pint in a quart, I suppose, sort of look. And yeah, so I'd say the bridges for the urban one and a level crossing for the countryside. Um, I'd I expect a lot more. Well, I mean, you do get the trees in the urban area.
No, of course.
London is that
I've thrown you a curveball with this one because
really? Yeah.
we haven't discussed this, but I wanted to sort of right, okay, so let's break this barrier. If you were going to define something that has to be a rural layout and an urban layout, what would you put? And I think the level crossing and the bridge idea, whilst it's not 100% true, I feel like that is a really good point as a defining point to sort of help identify. Because although there's a big bridge in Havant. Havant is a main hub uh, on a railway point of view. There's a big bridge on one side and a level crossing on the other. So you do have differences, but I think that is a really interesting idea to
Yeah,
sort of help define it.
it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's what I'd more expect. I'd expect to see a level crossing on a rural setting than I would in an urban setting,
Mm.
just because of the practicalities of everything. But like I said, it's not to say that there wasn't. The railways would try and build bridges where they could, and even it all depends on your modelling period. But even today, Network Rail try and close as many level crossings and replace them with bridges as they can, because they just don't like level crossings, which is fair enough. So it's sort of going back to steam days, that's when I think of a steam railway, that's what I think you more than likely expect. And as I say, it's not hard and fast, and there definitely are level crossings within the city, and there's definitely bridges within the countryside.
Mm.
Stuff built on embankments and that, and but that's kind of what I suppose I'd expect. I'm looking for a rural layout, as I say, obviously there are trees in the urban area, and I think London's technically classed as a forest. There's enough trees in London that it's actually technically classed as a forest. Um, so even in real life, the definitions and parameters can be muddied. But I would expect, plenty of trees or rivers, fields, all that idyllic. It's nice to get out in the country sort of thing that you think of when someone goes, "Oh, let's get out to the country for the weekend." I mean, I get out to the country every weekend because I live in it. So, but that's what kind of thing I expect to see. I wouldn't be expecting to see any tower blocks or massive warehouses and stuff like that. That's all I'd associate with an urban scene. Large breweries. I mean, obviously we've still got breweries these days, but I'm sort of thinking of those Metcalfe kits. That's where I expect to see one of those sort of Metcalfe brewery kits is in one of your more town and scene than an urban. Sorry, apologies, a country scene. And yeah, and obviously, if we're looking at rural, I'd expect to see some sort of farm that would a level crossing, a farm, and something natural like a river or a wood, something like that. I think
Mm.
those are the three elements I'd sort of expect to see.
I Now that you've mentioned a wood, I don't think I've seen one where and I mean we talked about, is it Tony's Wood, the narrow gauge layout that both me, you, and Tom from Buggers Kelly Station were talking about. Like
Yes.
that is one of the few layouts I can think of where you are forced to look through the wood to see it, and it's such a beautiful atmospheric layout. But I can't think of one. So if you go along the Watercress line, you'll be going along the line and you'll have wheat fields sort of going along, and then all of a sudden you're in a forest kind of area. And I'm trying to think if I've seen a double O gauge layout that does that. I can't think of one that does.
I'm no, so when it comes to some of the Steam ones, obviously back in the age of Steam, along the embankments, the gangers would clear the vegetation. There would be no trees and that allowed to grow on the side, with the sparks and embers coming out of the funnels during dry seasons in the summer. You'd get a lot of line side fires as well, and so that sort of vegetation wouldn't be seen on so much so on a steam era model railway, and obviously because of the depth of your baseboard and how much you're modeling, you might see like Greenland painted on the back scene or in the photograph of the back scene, and maybe just a couple of trees in front. But yeah, I'm do you know, the only one I can think of, and it's the one we talked about with Tom, is the basically the vertical layout where they've done the Linton and Barnstable line along the cliff,
Hmm.
and it's all trees along the top because they made that with expanding foam. So they covered the board in expanding foam and then just shaped it and then just put a load of green sort of foliage all over the top of it to look like a really dense forest. And
Yeah.
that's one that comes to mind, but there's not many others I can think of. And another one I can think of but it's not a lot of trees. It was just a few Scots pines that are modelled just by the railway, but it wasn't. I think it's about a 1 foot wide baseboard. It was a southern region layout. Again, I can't think of the name. But yeah, no, you don't. I don't think you do. You really see a lot, like you say. The Tony's Wood or Forest, or whatever it's called, is definitely one where it's modelled all around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as modelled as much, I suppose.
I've just got this idea of this sort of like, yeah, I think you're right with farm and level crossing and maybe field. Like I love the look of wheat fields as trains are going past it, kind of thing. And even in a modern day, the Portsmouth to Waterloo line, you go through loads of bits where there's loads of fields, loads of greenery, and you get your sheep and stuff like that. Um, so we've got two for the rural side of it, and you say it has to have a farm or maybe a pub or something like that. It has to have sort of, or do we define it as the type of brick used on those buildings? So you're not going to get the grey stone on an urban layout. You're more likely to get the red brick on an urban layout. Whereas, and it's not 100% hard and fast. I know that, but in terms of like sort of trying to define the countryside and the urban, do you think the brick style used is a massive?
Maybe like you say, it's not hard and fast because it all depends on what area you're modelling, doesn't it? Because if you're going for Norfolk, you're going to get a lot of flint style buildings. If you're heading, the other side to Wales, you're going to get a lot of slate style. In the middle, we've got Cotswold stone. That's the more common building material. But like you say, when you get to the more urban centres, because of the railway and the quick and rapid build up of these areas, yeah, London brick is what you're more than likely to see on the likes of a London layout or maybe around Cambridge, Oxford possibly as well. Just I'm trying to think sort of the areas that would be within the Oxford clay boundaries of where these brickworks were.
Hmm.
Um, and Peterborough, I suppose, is another one. I think there was a lot of brick traffic around there. So yeah, I think when it comes to the more main lines and more built up areas, the brick that we should expect to see would be something that has been manufactured at somewhere like the brickworks at Stewartby or something like that. And then, like you say, when you come out to the more rural areas, it's going to be houses built of the locally sourced building material that was the cheapest one that to bring in. So, like you say, your flint for your Norfolk area, your slate for Wales, and your Cotswold stone for your Oxfordshire and Cotswolds. Um, Yorkshire is the same as well. You looked at sort of Yorkshire area, shall I say, models, you'd expect to see that Yorkshire stone, which is very similar to the Cotswold style stone.
Yeah.
Um, that one, that one's a little bit more difficult because that one did creep into the towns. The mills were built with it, and then obviously because the mills were built up, the surrounding houses were built up, and they, again, it's something that then bucks the trend, doesn't it? Because you wouldn't, you can't quite define if it's urban or country because the same building material is used throughout that area. It's and because of the way of the Industrial Revolution and the sort of evolution of these towns, it's sometimes they were just villages that just became the urban scene, aren't they? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think for a generalization, you probably would expect that rural setting to use something that's looks more locally sourced, should we say, the thatch roof, etc.
Yeah. That's cool. It was more of I know that there's not going to be a completely general hard and fast on it, but I was intrigued as to what you would define because I guess you could have a terminus station that is on the edge of uh like an urban area, but because it's right on the edge of an urban area, it could still have that country feel to it. And I think that's one of the best bits when you get someone who can model that. I feel like Bognor Regis is probably one of those terminus stations that is in a busy area, it's a busy station, but it is right on the verge of. I mean, Bognor's not necessarily it's not a city, but it is busy
Mm.
and it has that urban feel to it. And I feel like you do get an Swanage. Swanage always feels like one of those places where you can see city around it, but it is also a very country, rural feeling line as well from all the pictures I've seen.
Yes, what Swanage is, yeah, again, Swanage sort of that enigma of it's runs through some very, very beautiful countryside. And then like you've got Corfe with the castle on the hill, and then the lovely sort of surrounding village around it, and that typical idealistic idea of what a rural layout should look like. And then, as you say, you run into Swanage, and then because it's the main hub, the built up area, it's this lovely countryside, and then it's a very quick transition, and you're straight into all the housing and the shops. There's not a lot of industry around there, but it's got that town feel about it. And it's but I think if you modelled it, you would know it was urban. You wouldn't expect it to be countryside, even though it's got the beautiful beach and surrounding fields only a stone's throw away.
Mm.
It's but yeah, it's a nice one. Definitely, it's a good choice to model. In fact, we're shouting out someone that does model it. So
Yeah, exactly. And I saw it at Chatham last year, and sorry, I got told off for this. Chatham. I saw it at Chatham last year. There you go. Are you happy? You know who you are. You know who you are. And it is a really beautiful layout. I think there's so many rules that we could put in place, but there's also so many things like you could have an industrial, very small shunting. There's a really good example that used to be on Portsea Island, wherein what I would consider to be the more country, in quotation marks, area of the island, there used to be a gasworks. So you had what was at the time a really like rural part of Portsea Island, considering how small it is. But you had this massive gasworks there at the same time. So you had the two right next to each other. You had one side that was very green and lush, and on the other side, these big, massive gas store areas where it had a little siding that went on, and they had a little, I want to say a little teddy bear shunter. I could be wrong, but yeah, like you can have the urban and the countryside meeting up with each other and having that sort of almost that clash on either side of the line, because that also happens.
yeah, that's it's again it's that blurring of boundaries, isn't it? It's not what you expect, but it's I suppose it's unless you're sort of doing a very defined area, sometimes it's quite difficult to define the two, I suppose, and it's maybe sometimes it's best to have a little bit of both when you lay out.
So then we'll come down to the final question. We've talked a lot about it, and we've not really come up with anything to sort of say like. But if you're going to pick one, would you model rural or urban?
I would probably I don't know. Actually, I like both. I think both are great. I'm probably more inclined to go with the rural, just for I would just like that nice little bit of countryside, and then do a small town, sort of. Just the station is just on the edge of that town, like that. Like, right, we were talking about those GWR layouts, so it's not fully immersed in it. It's just on the border. That's probably how I'd do it.
Okay,
I
that's
don't
cool.
with myself.
I think from a modeling point of view, as much as I love a big fancy station, and if I had all the money in the world, I would model something that's sort of on that approach. Like the Clapham to Waterloo area would be insane to model. But I think if I was doing it at home, I think I would go for a rural setting, because with a rural setting, you don't necessarily define the time as much as you do on another one.
That's true. I suppose the other advantage is if you start in rural, you can do like real life, and you can eventually move out from the town and start building and developing on the surrounding fields. And that's what I suppose meets the term of model railways never finished. So you can always just evolve it later on and just have some lovely fields until you feel like you're more in the mood to model some buildings, I suppose. So yeah, I think we've solved the problem. Start off rural, to copy real life, and eventually make it urban.
There you go.
You're welcome. So that's our discussion for the week. Hope it's been an interesting one. And we're going to take a short break and come back with our social media shout outs. Hello there, dear listener. We thought we'd just take a moment to talk to you about our Patreon. For the last few weeks, Sam has been putting out an advert impersonating David Attenborough, trying to entice you to give us your money. And you were right not to do it. But now we ask you from the bottom of our hearts to follow us on Patreon.
If you do want to support us in what we do and you believe that what we do is good enough that you want a part of your money, you can find us on Patreon and you can start donating for as little as $1 a month. It's in dollars, it's in freedom credits, however you want to say it, but eventually it will just take the pounds from your bank account. And if you do want to support James and myself, head on over to Patreon. There's varying levels and tiers that you can do. And there's even a tier where I'll weather stuff for you and James gets the benefit of it. So why not support us on Patreon today?
Indeed. And that way we can get a new microphone so you can stop complaining that you can't hear us. Okay, so that was our discussion on urban or rural layouts. Rather narrow-minded, I suppose. There's lots of others you can throw in there. Seaside, mountain, narrow gauge. But we just wanted to, just have a little discussion and think about what could be a better choice. And obviously, there is no answer. It's down to you. It's what you like. So, yeah, but that was quite a nice little chat about it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I walked away from that chat sort of the way I've planned my layout is effectively it is two scenic sections, two separate bits. They don't join together in essence, although the trains run between the two of them. There are scenic breaks on both of them. And I feel like because I've done it like that, I think because the bridge is such a big section of it, it really spurred me on to start doing some of that rural aspects of it. And I think I spoke to you about this off recording, and because of how, or it might even be in the recording, because you've got effectively the M27, which is quite a let's go of an urban feeling structure. Although that's not in the city, it adds this sort of urban feel to one end of that board. And then because I've got all the greenery on the other end of it, all the trees, all the lush vegetation, I've got this really nice countryside feel to it. And then because I'm going to have that sort of station section on the next board, I'm getting the best of both worlds to it. But because of the chat we had about this, I've gone away really excited to do the shrubs and the vegetation, which I wasn't that excited about previously, and it sort of spurred me on to do it. So the chat has been very useful for me, at least.
That's good. Yeah, I like doing the shrubs and that. Part of modeling I really enjoy, and it's one bit I never really get round to, is making your own trees. That's something I quite like. I quite like doing. But then again, that fits in both scenes, really, doesn't it? So there are trees and towns.
I I bizarrely hate doing it. I
I do.
prefer I prefer getting. I tried doing it. I built like a scenic diorama for an old. I entered a Lord of the Rings tabletop game tournament, and one of the things in there was that if you made your own display board, you could win a prize. Unfortunately, it got cancelled just before COVID.
Ah,
I think it was the weekend. I think the country shut down, and then it was meant to be on that weekend. And I built, in Lord of the Rings. Sorry, we've gone way off piste on this one. When they get to is it Amon where they get ambushed by the Uruk Hai, and spoiler alert for anyone who A hasn't read the books and B hasn't seen a 25-year-old film.
I like that. Yeah,
You've been warned, all right? The bit where Boromir
2023, I think, off the top of my head, but
pretty sure, yeah. Anyway, the bit where Boromir becomes a Colander. The so I had a force that was meant to be the Fellowship. So I did it where I had these elvish boats and I had like a little river scene and then I had all the trees surrounding it sort of thing. And the idea was that you displayed it and you had all of the Fellowship in the boats, but it had like a really like dense forest around it. So I tried making my own trees. And I think I did 2 or 3 trees. And I went, nope, I hate this. And instantly just went out and bought plastic trees to do it. And I think it's because, especially when you buy a box of seafoam, it is very hit and miss whether you get a good or a bad box.
yeah, you can. The trouble with the seafoam is it can curl when it's stored in the box and when it's drying out. But there are ways that you can straighten it back out. So one of it is if you dip them in PVA glue,
Yeah.
the whole thing, dip it sort of a diluted solution, and then add a weight to it, and then hang it upside down, and then to let it dry out. That will force it back into a more realistic shape for it. Um, one of the methods I like that I've seen, I haven't tried it, but it looks quite impressive. I can't remember who I saw do it. You know those Woodland Scenic tree kits that you get with the plastic armatures?
Yeah.
They're very 2D in the way that they're molded, and the instructions say, oh, you just sort of twist them round to make it more 3D, but it doesn't look natural, it doesn't look real. If you get the sort of the offcuts of the sea foam and use them, you sort of still twist the armatures a little bit, but not too much, and then you add the sea foam to them to expand it out, and then you put on your scenics on top. That comes out quite as an impressive looking tree. The one I like to do is with wire. So you get the like florist wire, or nice bit of copper cable wire, something like that. Sort of something like quite the high multi-strand copper cable. And I've built trees this way, and you twist them, and then you start pulling out the arms with the twistings of of the cable, and then coat it in some sort of plaster of Paris or some sort of coating like that. I can't think off the top of my head what the other stuff they use, but do it like that, let that dry, paint it up, and then add your scenics on that way. I made a couple of trees like that, and that's one of my favorite ways of making trees. I think they look really good.
Oh, okay.
There are different ways. There's a couple of books out there. And I can't tell you what they are right now because they're in my bookcase in the house, but I could probably let you know which books to have a look for. They're quite a good read to give you ideas of how to make trees. So yeah, you don't have to go down the seafoam route. There's other ways.
Excellent. That's good. That's good to know. I'll bear that in mind. I mean, I'm very very flush with trees at the moment, but there's a future project coming up that James is the only one who knows about, which is going to require some slightly larger trees anyway. So maybe I'll have a look at the other ways of making trees a little bit further down the line.
So is that the Endor diorama you're building?
Yeah, it's gonna I'm taking a leaf out of Kathy Miller's book, and I'm just gonna start doing loads of Star Wars dioramas.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Forest Moon of Endor.
So following on from that, then we've managed to bleed the subject into the end chat. But yeah, I really enjoyed having a chat about that, and it spurred me on to do some of my scenics, especially for the side of the green side of my bridge section of my layout. So thank you for having that chat, James, because it has spurred on my scenic building anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. Do you know, the statistics would tell us how interesting and popular the subject is, and maybe we can use that data and work out other subjects to talk about. But it's the same like Fiddle Yard. Fiddle Yard still sits as one of our most listened to podcasts, doesn't it? And people have asked for more on that and found it a very interesting subject. And we talked about things that they hadn't thought about or considered. So hopefully this is done the same. And anyone sort of what we like to do is help people that obviously we've got established modelers that listen, but anyone that's new into the hobby that's come along and just discovered the podcast and considering joining also sort of gives them an idea of what to consider and what to look for before they start their own projects. Right then, shall we have a look at the exhibition diary?
Yes, let's.
Right. There's not a lot coming on this weekend, and that's because probably there is a good reason for that. So, as of the forthcoming weekend of the 23rd and 24th of November, we have the following exhibitions. Saturday, the 23rd of November, sees the Bedfordshire 16mm narrow gauge area group with their steaming beds, and they are meeting at Eaton Bray Village Hall, Church Lane in Eaton Bray near Dunstable. That's in Bedfordshire. And children under 16 can enter free if they're accompanied by a paying adult. So there's a little incentive there if you're in the area and you want to go see that. So yeah, that's what's cool. I quite like the live. I think we've discussed this before about our opinions on live Steam model railway exhibitions. We won't go into it now. I like them. Let's put it that way. Saturday the 23rd is the Guildford O Gauge Group, and it's the Dog Trade Day. And this is at the Spectrum Leisure Centre Parkway in Guildford, Surrey. It's an annual O Gauge Trade Day with club layouts, a large test track, and 50 plus traders. There's a bring and buy stand and 1,000 free car park spaces. So, plenty of room for you there, for all you O Gauge modelers. On Saturday the 23rd as well is the Kings Lynn Model Railway Club, and they're having their Model Railway Club Open Day, and this is at Grimston Village Hall in Cliff on Howe Road in Kings Lynn, Norfolk. So it's their biannual club open day in the Village Hall with free entry. So definitely one to get to if you're in the area. No excuses there, really. You're not even paying a penny to go and enjoy some model trains. So I'd go there if I could. It's just a little too far for me. The next one is in Llandudno. So apologies to all you Welsh listeners as I butcher your language once again and say it's the Deganaway Railway Modelers. I'm so sorry. I know that's not it, and you're gonna just murder me for it. See, now it's got written as Craig, right? I'm gonna say Craig, and I'll get told off for that because that's not how you pronounce it, right? So this is a real butchering right here. It's in Llandudno, all right? That's Queens Road, Llandudno. What looks to appear to be Craig, but probably not pronounced Craig. Craig Y Don, all right, or however you say it in Welsh. Craggy Don, Community Centre at Queens Road, Llandudno, Conway. Yeah, apologies. Very sorry. The worst thing is I like building Welsh-based model railways, and I find that the hardest part is getting the language right for the names and stuff. But I tried. Now, obviously, the reason that probably why there isn't so much on this weekend is because it is the very first Warners Group National Festival of Railway Modelling at the NEC. So this is the replacement for the Worley exhibition. The Warners Group have stepped up and have taken the reins and have got over 60 plus layouts with an abundance of retailers, specialist manufacturers, lots of clubs and societies all present. I even think that the locomotive that they're bringing in, because there's always a locomotive that's brought in, is Douglas from the Talaclin. So if you want to go see a nice, lovely little Talaclin loco, once his boiler ticket's out of date, he's just been I've been on display at the Severn Valley in the shed there, and he's come for a little NEC appearance. So that's that one going on, obviously at the NEC in Birmingham. And I believe if you buy your tickets in advance, you can get discount on the ticket and on the parking. And looking at what the cost of parking is, if you don't get that discount, I would really recommend getting the parking discount because I think it's about £18 to park your car if you don't get this discount, which is extortionate. So yeah, a recommendation on that one there. So yep, just have a look. I think it'd be like the BRM website or the Warners Exhibition Group website to have a look there for that. Also on this weekend is the Scunthorpe and District Model Railway Club. It's both days, Saturday and Sunday. It's their model railway show at Sunshine Hall in Ashby High Street, Scunthorpe, Lincolnshire. And then following that, on the 24th, is the New Forest Model Railway Society and their annual open day at the Brockenhurst Village Hall, Highwood Road in Brockenhurst, Hampshire. It's an open day show, club layouts and member layouts, and possibly a visitor or two. So there you go. That's that one going there. And it's free admission for unaccompanied under 18-year-olds. So, yeah, another little adventure out for the kids if you want something to do and don't want to spend too much. And that's the exhibition diary for this weekend. Right then, Sam, social media time. Who are you shouting out this week?
Okay, so this week I have been in stitches watching these the videos from this channel over the last couple of weeks. It's that sort of thing of I put them on my watch later and they come up, and I usually end up have it in the background, and I end up just the commentary on the videos is great. So I'm shouting out this week, Double O Dave. It's just a very light-hearted channel. It's a really good modeling, but the commentary on the videos is really, really good as well. So Double O Dave, if you're listening, thank you for keeping me entertained and fantastic modeling on there as well.
Yeah, I discovered his channel a little while back, and yeah, as you say, there's some great modeling on there, some really great modeling, and I think he's not been too long into the hobby either. From what I understand, he's sort of a late comer to it, so to speak. So yeah, that sort of level of modeling from someone that hadn't really done it much before, I think it's quite impressive. But as you say, those videos, the commentary is quite amusing. I'm sure I watched one when he was claiming he knew Tom Cruise, but admitted by the end of it he didn't actually know Tom Cruise. I recall that was quite a funny one as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What about you? Who are you giving a shout out for this week?
Well, mine's a very chalk and cheese selection, I suppose, to Double O Dave, because whilst they were very similar in their modelling, and he's a very superb modeler, he's definitely not the same sort of level of comedic talking commentary, shall we say? But yeah, I do really like his modelling. This is Wood Hill Park. So it's 1980s, mostly modeler. There is the occasional more modern thing that pops up in there. There's some very enjoyable videos and modeling as he's building his layout in the loft. Currently sitting at almost 3,000 subscribers. So he's very slowly climbing, but it is very, very good modeling. A bit of to describe the look of it, it's a bit like the Dean Park setup, which I'm sure many people listening would know how the Dean Park setup is, where he's got a lower level and a higher level of running line. But it's all very nice. He's continually changing and improving his layout. He takes bits out, he puts new sections in. He's constantly evolving. So there's always something going on in there. So that's my shout out, which is Wood Hill Park Model Railway.
I think you're right with the commentary being very chalk and cheese. But you are right; it's a very, very good level of modelling. But you almost have one being a very somber news announcer, and one, dare I say it, is more Bo Selector narration. Is that
I was about to go Keith Lemon.
It's definitely got that sort of like sort of feeling to it. So yeah, very chalk and cheese, both extremely good modelers.
Yes, indeed. So that's our social media shout outs for the week. Obviously, we are still on social media. We haven't been cancelled yet. We haven't said anything controversial enough for that. Although from the sounds of obviously our Fight Club last week, Up North may not be so happy with us. I don't know why. Were we that mean to? I'm just playing on me now. Were we that mean? Were we that bad to Northern Engines?
No, I just don't. I don't think the Northern Engines won many, I think is what they were getting at. And the fact that I didn't let the Black Five win. And I mean, there's the Midland Pullman got like a rave review. It's one of those things.
At Manchester. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those problems, isn't it? We're never going to please everyone, and unfortunately, the ones we like. But that's saying that.
I think the bigger problem is that these people weren't listening properly, because we did say many times we're not saying these are bad engines. They're all in our top picks. It's just we're just trying to find which one we think is the better one. So you're being offended for being praised. That's all that's happening there.
I think the thing is, we're making it sound like people have been like cancelled, never listening again. They're not. They're just saying that we were just very heavily biased towards the Southerners. So those of you who did message me, we're not attacking you. We're just saying we thought we were really kind. We thought it was a very well put together episode, and we weren't mean to anyone, which makes a change. We didn't upset each other. We didn't upset any. I even stood up for the A4 at one point. I even said, I don't want to say it, but it's going in second place. And that's still second place.
Exactly. So there you go. There we go. I don't know. What I would like to do, I would like to revisit at some point, but I think this may be more in the future when maybe we can, depending how the podcast goes and how we establish ourselves, so we can sort of possibly set some sort of website up and have the ability to put a survey together so people can vote and stuff like that. But that's probably way off in the future, obviously, depending how we get on as a podcast, because I would like a bit more interaction. Because we tried to do it through Instagram, but as we've discovered, many of you out there don't use Instagram. So I feel it's quite unfair to keep putting Instagram votes out when it probably only represents a fraction of our audience. However, we are on Instagram, and Sam, how can they find you on there?
Cool. If you want to find me on Instagram and tell me that I'm a good little Southern boy, you can get hold of me at Emperors_Path. Alternatively, you can find me on YouTube at Emperors Path. James, how can they get hold of you?
Well, I do go under the handle of Western Signalman. So that would be why I like to pick Western things, I suppose. And you can find me on Instagram as Western Signalman, YouTube as Western Signalman, and also you can email westernsignalman@outlook.com. But not forgetting that Model Rail Replacement Podcast is on Instagram. If you do use Instagram, come and find us. We're almost at 1,000 followers. We're nearly there. So I don't know. Maybe we'll give a prize out. I've got some coasters left, so who knows?
I feel
We'll
like a
think about that.
t-shirt. Let's do the first ever Model Rail Replacement Podcast t-shirt as a giveaway
Yeah.
for because that's a lot of people have been asking for merch, but the problem is that we just haven't had the time to set it up on Redbubble. So we'll do it. We'll make it special where the first official t-shirt will be to a competition winner, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, cool. So there we go. There you are. There's a reason to come and find the Model Rail Replacement Podcast on Instagram. If you want to email us, it's modelrailrp@outlook.com. And that's it, really. Yeah, as ever. I've been your host, James. With me has been Sam. And all I can say is that hopefully we've been entertaining, informative, and have replaced your model railway, if only just for a little bit. I've said it the wrong way around because I get the names first. I'm just going to say thanks for listening.
This service terminates here. Please ensure you take all of your personal belongings with you.